Welcome, folks, to another one in our series of 10. We're going to be taking a look at human resources during this session. So very happy to have you back. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is our regular first of the Friday webinars, first Friday of the month webinars, and had a little bit of a scheduling issue here on this one. That's why we're a little bit later in the month. But yeah, glad to have you guys back. So very happy to be working on this. So our host today, myself, David, as usual, and supporting us is Jessica. So on sound and technology, if you have any issues, just pop in to the chat window or give Jess an email. I do see one quick question here around, is there a phone number I can call into? And no, unfortunately, we're doing these all over voice over IP, so you would need either speakers or a headset on your computer. We do record them, however, so if there is any issues, you can watch them recorded later. So let me just do a quick reply here. No phone number. Okay, there we go. Just to help you with the technology side of things, at the top of your screen there's a little drop down. It looks like a little person waving. Click that. You have a number of options such as raising your hand, speak louder, speak softer, speed up, slow down, that kind of thing. Jess will be monitoring that for us and making sure that if there's any issues, you can give us a quick little heads up. There's the chat window right below my video. Invite you to participate. So if you do have any thoughts or comments or questions during our session, please pop them in there. We'll be monitoring that throughout. Questions we'll address at appropriate times. So if you do have a question, we might not address it right away, but get to it a little bit later. And finally, of course, as always, we do accept applause. All right, moving on. As is our tradition or our standard, we're going to start with an opening thought. And I'm a huge, huge fan of Jim Collins's work. So if you have not read his books, Good to Great, Built to Last, taking a look at his work, do highly, highly recommend it. And one of his base adages that has come out of all of his research is get the right people on the bus. Now, Jim is a professor, and I apologize, I forget which university, but he's done a whole bunch of research, so his stuff is very much research backed. And one of the surprising things he found is that many of the most successful companies in the world, they started without a compelling idea or product, and it was really all about the right people being there as opposed to the right products. And I'm just going to highlight three of the companies that he looked at in his research: HP, Sony, and 3M. And HP, which is Hewlett and Packard, and these two gentlemen got together in university. They said, we don't know what we want to do, but we do know we want to work together. And granted, HP isn't in its heyday today, but in its heyday, it was a very innovative company. It was a very forward company. Did really a lot of really cool things, and by any measure, really, it is a very successful company. Sony, this is one that started just after the Second World War in a burned out factory in Japan. And again, they started with no idea what they were going to do. In fact, their first product was a failed rice cooker. They ended up making heating blankets by sewing heating elements into blankets just to pay the bills. So, I mean, here's a company that started with very much, they didn't have that compelling product. It was just a team of people who wanted to work together. 3M, there's another fantastic story. I mean, hugely, hugely successful company. And what most people don't realize is 3M, its actual name is Minnesota Mining and Minerals. And it was a failed mine. They ended up doing sandpaper just to keep the lights on, again, similar to Sony's story. But it was really the people that made these companies great. And that's what we're going to be kind of our theme as we look at our session today. So I'm going to start off with our first question this morning right out of the gate. Who is the right person to have on your project? So we're using this theme of get the right people on the bus. Who's the right person? So just pop into the question box down at the bottom here. Type in what are some of the things that make you say this is the right person for your project. All right, seeing some great responses rolling in fast and furious here. Seeing lots of people saying SMEs, subject matter experts. We need those skills. I'm very happy to see, skill-based entries. No skills, no scope. I'm loving also the attitude piece. We see people saying, from Cal here, energy, passion, team player, people who want to be there. From Sean, end users. Oh, thank you, Sean. Yes, we so many times forget the end users. I mean, we're trying to satisfy our customers, but our customers are not always the people that are making the decisions. From Richard, must be able to communicate with each other. Oh, Richard, you're speaking to my heart, my friend. It's absolutely, if we can't work together, if we can't communicate, knowledge on both the project and operational side from Kim. Yeah, some really good stuff here. From Hank, proactive problem solvers. I love the proactive piece on that. I'm a huge fan of the concept of being out in front. And by this, what I mean is you're out in front of your project. You're anticipating where you're going as opposed to where you are. And I think this was really, epitomized well or quoted well by the great hockey player whose name just jumped out of my head. Oh my God, 99. Jess, help me out here. Wayne Gretzky, thank you. All right, the great one. Thanks, Richard Wayne. Yeah, he used to say that what he would do is he would skate to where the puck is going to be, not to where the puck is now. And for any of you guys or gals with young kids out there who like to play soccer or hockey, it's hysterical to watch them, to see this little gaggle of kids running after the ball and sort of following it as it moves around the field, as opposed to kind of getting out in front, anticipating where it's going and sort of being there so that it comes to you. So yeah, some really great stuff here, guys. I'm liking this. This is great. So we've got a good savvy group today. Now, I was in a client site down in Boston this week, and on the plane down, I was looking at the movies and thought, well, what do I want to watch? And the first half of the movie that I watched, the first half of my previous flight was no longer available, which is always a challenge. It was an hour flight, so I thought, I'm going to go look at the documentary channel and see what's there. And I came across this show that was called "Are You Smarter Than Your Pet?" And I thought, hey, this seems interesting. Let's have a look. And what they did is they set out some tasks that were very actually cognitively difficult tasks and pitted humans up against animals. And the first one was actually a maze. So there's a very famous maze in England. It's one of those big garden mazes, and you kind of walk through and get to the center. And so they took a London cabbie. Now, you have to understand London cabbies. They go through, they have something what they call the knowledge. And a London cabbie needs to know all of the streets and all of the routes and all of the town or the businesses and the shop fronts and all this kind of stuff. And it takes them a couple of years to study and learn this. And there's about, for all the folks who apply to be a London cabbie, it's about 3 out of 10 who actually make it. And the cabbies there in London, they're world renowned, and they're usually quite career-minded. So they took a 25-year, 30-year veteran cabbie and pitted him up against a rat. So what they did is they built a replica of this huge maze. They put him in the maze, they put the rat in the maze, they gave them each a few minutes to explore and kind of learn the maze, and then they put them on a timed run against each other. And as you might guess, the rat won. Well, then they did a similar one with a chimpanzee, a cockatoo, an elephant-nosed fish, a pigeon, and a dog. I'm sad to report, folks, that we have been shut out. So, yeah, unfortunately. So the chimpanzee, remembering a sequence of numbers, and there was this chimp that they would flash up 10 numbers on a screen, cover them up, and the chimp would be able to go bing, 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 and hit them all in sequence. And they would do the same thing with people on the streets. And we weren't able to do this. And the chimp was able to do this after seeing the numbers in the sequence for just a few seconds. The cockatoo would hold off on one treat to get the better one, and that's the classic experiment of the you take a young child and give them a reward now, or they can hold off for 2 minutes and get a better, bigger reward. The elephant-nosed fish, they're looking for buried treasure against a very experienced treasure hunter. I love the pigeon one, though. The pigeon one was really neat, because what they did is they had people walk through an art gallery looking at Monet paintings, and then they would put 2 paintings up on screen, and they were told to choose which was the Monet and which was not. And they did the same thing with the pigeon. So they made a little tiny art gallery that was, pigeon sized, and let the pigeon walk through. And the pigeon, 100%, boom, 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 was able to get the Monets. And they took people who were self-described, they'd studied art, and sadly they weren't able to do this. And then finally the dog recognizing the owner's face, and then the owner had to recognize the dog's face, and they took away features. So eventually it was just the eyes. And that one we actually had almost a tie, because the owner was able to recognize the dog's face, but it took them much longer. But what it all boiled down to is each species is uniquely adapted to their environment. So of course the contest was rigged. They got the very best of the animal kingdom in there to do that. But what it raises for us is, when we look at who are we putting on our team, we want to ask that question: how are you uniquely skilled to do the job? And the better you are, the more uniquely skilled you are for that particular job, the better you're going to be able to do it. So, we tend to think we're top of the heap here, and meanwhile, what is that? 6 out of 6, they kind of beat us. So, on that note, I'm just gonna share with you a quick little video. It's actually an ad, so let me just pop this open here.
Ja, ontzettend leuk. Persoonlijk vind ik hem gewoon een aanwinst voor het bedrijf. En hij kan ook echt iets wat niemand anders kan.
Ons primaire doel is om gevonden voorwerpen zo snel mogelijk terug te brengen naar de eigenaar. We houden daarvoor social media in de gaten en de crew die na elke vlucht het vliegtuig checkt. Ik vind het ook wel heel erg leuk dat we natuurlijk een beetje hulp daarbij krijgen.
Trainen op spierkracht, uithoudingsvermogen en socialiseren. Ja, en als je die reacties ziet, dan is dat eigenlijk wel heel mooi.
Hij komt regelmatig langs, maar ja, ik moet ook eerlijk bekennen, ik verwen hem ook wel.
Mind your step. Mind your step.
Whoops, there we go. Okay, so here's a resource on your project who's uniquely skilled to do that job. So looking at the skill sets of a scent hound, you could see them, they picked up the scent of the owner from the leftover cell phone, popped it into his backpack, and away he went and found the person. There's another really neat version of this, which is Toronto Pearson Airport is actually, they piloted this, and they have hawks and dogs on staff to chase away birds and other wildlife to keep them off the airport property to make it safer. And they've been doing that for, I think, about 20 or 30 years now. And those programs are now starting to be done in other parts of the world. So, you want to really ask yourself, what is the skill that I really need for this job? And what does that look like? And sometimes the answer might be a little bit surprising. So, talking about skill, talking about attitude, and we saw a number of answers on our, who's the right person for the job. It didn't just so solidly come back, I need the right skills, I need the right skills, I need the right skills. We also have to the attitude, and really, we want to kind of balance those two. Yes, we need the skills, but we also need the attitude, because with both of them, that's where the brilliance happens. Now, sometimes we have to make a choice, though. So I'm going to pop into our poll here, and I'm going to force you to choose. And I agree that, ideally you want both. But there's times when we don't get both. So which would you pick? Would you take skill over attitude? Would you take attitude over skill? I'll give a few minutes for people to answer that. All right, we'll give it a few more moments. It's interesting results happening here. Okay, so we got a little over half the people have responded to our poll. Let's view the results. Oh, sorry, wrong button. Here we go. I think we do that one. End poll. There we go. All right. So you should be seeing the results now. 82% said they would take attitude over skill. Wow, that's amazing. 17% said skill over attitude, and totally recognize that there are going to be times when higher skill is going to play a little bit more into this, higher attitude is going to play a little bit more into this. Personally, if I was to choose, I would probably go with the majority here and say attitude over skill. Being a trainer, being a lifelong trainer, I firmly believe that we can teach you the skills you need to have. Teaching attitude, though, man, that's tough. That's tough. So interesting results here where we look at overwhelmingly people are saying attitude over skill. And then, of course, we could then get into a further discussion around, what is skill? Because we can subdivide skill from, skills and competencies into talent, which is inherent versus, learned, and, all this kind of fun stuff. And it is definitely a very dynamic conversation. So I want to just shift gears a little bit. We've been talking very much about the individual, which is very key in this area, but we also need to talk about the team. Right, because we're rarely working with just individuals. Usually it's teams of people. So I'm going to pose this question here and ask you, how do you define the word team? So again, pop into the chat box down the bottom there, and I would like to hear what is your definition of a team. All right, some fabulous results flowing in here. Let's take a look. Willing to work with others. That's an interesting one, Ada. Yeah, I like that. A group of people working towards common goal. Absolutely. We're seeing that many people, Amy, Alex, Lisa, are all saying that. Working towards that common objective. Mutually accountable to each other's actions from Richard. Oh, that's a beautiful one. Love it. We sometimes drop that accountability piece, and that's really cool. And I love that it's mutually accountable. Because then we get into that interdependent mode. Group of people working together, cohesion, common purpose. I'm loving this, some great stuff here. All working towards the same goal. So really, I mean, if I were to just at a quick glance here, I would say that probably 90% are saying, working towards that common goal. Totally agree. Now, here's the definition that I like to use for a team. And I came across this definition in 1999. I was in a conference down in Disney World, of all places. And it was actually an IT conference on programming in the Lotus Notes world. And I saw a session around teams and leadership and stuff, which is a pet topic of mine, so I hopped into it. And it was a gentleman from IBM. But here's his definition of a team: 8 or less people. Now, when you first look at that, you go, hold on a second, dude. I've worked in teams that are way more than 8, but let's just hold on to that for a second. Working towards the same goal. We saw that 95% respondents are saying a bunch of people working together towards that same goal. And here's the piece that really kind of sets this one out. Using the same method or process. Now, I want you to think about what it's like when you work on a larger team. You're on a team of, let's say, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 people. What happens? Naturally, we subdivide. Right? We get into smaller groups. So the person who's leading, the overall leader of the team, is not interfacing with the 100 people. They're interfacing directly with 5, 6, 7 team leads. And those team leads are interfacing with their 5, 6, 7, 10, team members, and so on. Now, here's where this model for me really resonates. I see that happening. So the 8 or less I get, working towards the same goal, that's the no-brainer piece. But using the same process or method. Now, let's think of a team lead when you're meeting with the project manager. You are shifting gears now, and you are meeting and discussing and working in a method or process of managing the project, right? From a project management, from a very PMI, PMBOK perspective. When you then turn around, leave that meeting, and you go meet with your team, you're now going to be working in much more of a technical expertise level, so that you are now working in a different way with your team, because now it's a different focus. Now, are you all working towards the same goal? So we've got, let's say we've got a team of 80 people, we've got 10 sub-teams of 8. Are you all working towards that same larger, greater goal? Yes, you are. But each of the sub-teams has their own individual, unique goal that they need to work to, much like the work breakdown structure, where we take the large item, we subdivide into the smaller items, and then we start working from there. So this definition for me really resonates. And when I think about that, and this is kind of a little bit of that tribe model, because when the tribe gets too big, it naturally subdivides. Now, whether it's 8 or 6 or 5 or 9, that's a little bit of a nuance. And I remember when I was first presented this, one of the challenges in the room, someone said, well, hold on a second. Look at a sports team. It's more than 8 people. He said, you're absolutely right. But sports teams are divided. There's offense, there's defense, there's if we're talking about baseball, there's the pitching, there's the batting, there's the fielding, right? So that they subdivide into different teams, and they work with a different process or method within those teams, right? So, it holds for me, and I'm going to put that out there for you. And if you want to use it, great. Maybe think about it. I'm also a huge fan of, when we look at these things, not to take them literally. So it's not exactly 8, could be a little bit of range there. Okay. So when we talk about people, aka resources, in the context of projects, so we've talked a little bit about individuals and skills and attitudes. We've talked about a little bit about the team. We've already seen this model here, where we talk about the business need, the product scope, the project scope, the why, the what, the how. The charter defines the why. The what and the how are then fleshed out in the scope statement, enhanced into the integrated project plan. The team comes into play at this level, because our project scope is the how, it's the work, it's what's going to get done. So we're now bringing the team in to support what it is we've planned to do. So without that, we've got just a bunch of paper, right? We don't have that execution. And I just wanted to put that in there to really put this into a context that if the end of my project is I've addressed the business need, and to address the business need, I've created this product, this thing, this what, that's going to address that need, well, I need the team to do the how, because without that, I don't have anything done. Hence the expression, no skills, no scope. So there's a second part of skill, which is availability. And availability is not a skill. I say this in class. I talk to people, use this little expression, and people sort of chuckle, but it's one of those sad, knowing chuckles around, oh yeah, I've had those people on my project, right? And availability is not a skill. You want to get the right skilled resources onto the job. So, here you have a resource who is very uniquely capable in doing this. And that is a picture of me. So that's on my horse Nordy and my dog Schweitzer. And the reason I chose this one is for anyone who rides and has dogs, and most people who ride also have dogs, but a lot of people like to ride with their dogs. And I've ridden with a number of different dogs in the past, and some of them are just not good skilled partners when it comes to doing this. My current dog, Elf, wonderful little guy. He is not a dog that you can ride your horse with. He's a herder. He likes to chase and nip at their heels, and it's not a good day. Schweitzer, on the other hand, she was very much a high skilled partner in this picture. I used to actually ride around courses doing jumps, and Schweitzer would be right there beside us, pretty much right exactly in that position you see in the picture, going over the jumps right with us. We could go anywhere, and she was contributing to the team. It was a really cool experience. So, availability is not a skill. Just because that resource is available doesn't mean that they're necessarily the right one. Yes, we did talk attitude and skill. I could also say availability is not attitude. Does it make them the right person? So we're going to build our dream team. Who do you want on your team? And apologize for anyone if this image is too soon. But what I wanted to do was really look at something very controversial. Look at something where we had two potential candidates who were very, very different. And instead of getting into the politics and the personalities and all that kind of stuff, I want to boil it down to what were the things that would make those people good candidates to be on your project team. And I started to think about what are the attributes that these two people bring to the table. And on the one side, we have experienced, pragmatic, career-minded. So the highly experienced potential team member, one who's very pragmatic, very kind of logical, very in this for the long run. On the other side of the table, we have the fresh ideas. We have the idealist. We have that rule breaker. Now, you take a look at those three items and think about all of the great leaders in history that we look to and read their books and model after, who we could use to describe those three words. People like the Steve Jobses of the world, the Dells of the world, even to some extent Henry Ford, although I would kind of put Henry Ford on both sides of this, because he was pragmatic, and career-minded, but he had fresh ideas. He was very revolutionary for his time. So there's definitely pluses on both sides of this table. So what I want to do, oops, I'm sorry, I went too far. What I want to do is I want to now ask you the second question. There we are. Who would you choose? Okay. Now, this is not, who did you vote for at any way. This is based on those attributes. Who would you choose to be on your team? Getting the votes in fast and furious. It's an interesting flow here. Yeah, we're seeing one pull ahead, then the other. It's very much like the real life event, and seeing a very fairly close race here. This is interesting. I'm liking this. Okay, so we'll give it a couple more moments. Okay, it looks like things have settled down a little bit, so I'm going to say end poll, broadcast results. So we have 66%, so it's 2/3 to 1/3. 66% it chose the experienced, pragmatic, career-minded, while 33% chose the fresh ideas, idealistic, and the rule breaker. Now, when I was first putting this together, I was going to use the Kirk versus Spock model, which is very similar to this, right? On one side, we have the logical, on the other side, we have the passion and emotion side of things. I've used that one in the past, and when I was first exposed to it, thanks to Mark and Sam Hurwitz, who wrote a fabulous book called Leadership is Half the Story. Highly recommend it. And I really love looking at that comparison, because there are times when you want the fresh ideas, the idealistic, the rule breaker. There's times when you want the experienced, pragmatic, career-minded. And it makes sense in the right scenario, right? So we want to kind of look at that. It is definitely very situational. But we want to kind of think about, what does that look like, and who's there, and what do they bring to the table, and then ask ourselves, what do we need brought to the table? But that's kind of high level stuff. So I want to really find out why you answered the way you did. So let's pop into here and answer some of those questions. Why would you choose the pragmatic? I'm just going to pop back into that. The experienced, pragmatic, career-minded versus the fresh ideas, realistic. And as you're answering, if you just want to just give us an indication of whether you chose, experienced or fresh ideas, pragmatic, idealistic, and so on. So just give us a quick indication, which one it was, whether it's, and you can just say A or B, for A for left and B for right. So let's hear why you chose. Richard, you chicken. All right. Sorry, neither. Totally fine. All right. So seeing lots of entries around, need to be a team player. I love that first one, the Steady Eddie from Mary Beth. Yeah, absolutely. Depends on the type of project and the needs from John. Totally agree, John. We tend to have our personal preferences, though. And there's some really good assessments out there. We like to use DISC when it comes to personality types. And you tend to find that there are certain personality types you tend to gel with relatively easy, while others find difficult. I love Catherine's answer around within my comfort zone. So here's someone who's looking at, this is the kind of style that I prefer, and this is what makes me comfortable, right? Quicker and easier to get things done from Amy on A. Better choice for success. Interesting on Steve when you say, A, better choice for success, but yet we look at some of the most successful people on the fresh ideas, idealistic, and rule breaker side, and we see some very successful people there. But I think what Steve's really getting at here, and I agree, is a better chance for success, because there are lots of idealistic rule breaker fresh idea folks who don't make it. So we tend to kind of be a bit of an all or nothing on the right, as opposed to on the left. It's a little bit more kind of, while we might not have that huge high level success, we're going to be successful at some level, right? Getting the job done. Fresh ideas. Team leader can discern and have ideas that are workable. From Layla, love that. Yeah. So I think putting that rule breaker, that idealistic person into some constraints, so that we get the ideas and then we kind of work through them. Loving that idea, right? Innovation, looking for a problem from a different angle. Absolutely. From Mary B, because we always have done it that way, leads to stagnation. Oh yes, my dear, so true. Love that one. Just getting into that same old routine and getting into the rut, and do we need to step out of that? From Carol, my experience would be sometimes it causes delays because they never stop their ideas. Absolutely, Carol, guilty as charged. And there was an earlier comment around, the leader would then kind of rein them in and sort of, separate the wheat from the chaff, right? Stephen, choose fresh ideas. As I personally more left-leaning, i.e. pragmatic, I think it would be advantageous to have some complementary views. Thank you, Stephen, for that, because that's foreshadowing right where we're going to be going. So it's kind of an interesting discussion, because we're seeing things from both sides of the fence, and it's not a simple black or white. It's not a simple which one is right and which one is wrong. There's definitely things on both sides. So we're going to pop into our next poll. And the question here is, do we tend to hire people who are like us or people who are not like us? So, myself being a very A-type outward personality, am I going to be looking for Dave 2.0, or am I going to be looking for, the introvert who's very quiet and reserved and that kind of thing? So, and the question is, what do we tend to do, not what we think we should do? So I'll leave the poll open for a few minutes. Okay, it's interesting doing these polls from my side. I can see the results flowing in, and you see the little spurt of activity, and then it sort of quietens down. All right. So and again, another interesting result: 68% to 31%. Actually, almost 69% to almost 31%. Yeah, research shows we tend to hire people like us, right? Now, fortunately, in today's world, and I've really seen this in the last, I would say, probably 10 to 15 years now, the whole idea of the self-aware leader is really taking root, really becoming mainstream. And when people become more self-aware, they tend to shift and hire people not like themselves, because they're realizing that we need to get people who are different than us on our teams to help round out our skills and cover off our deficiencies. So thinking we're a fairly savvy group here today. But our natural tendency is to hire people like us. And quite honestly, this is tied back to some multi-million-year-old survival instinct. Things that we're unfamiliar with, we tended to shy away from, and our ancestors who did that tended to live more than people who went and investigated those unfamiliar things. So there is a natural tendency there, but with a bit of discipline and a bit of awareness, we can deal with some of that. So some really cool results here today. Thanking you guys so much for your participation. Okay, now our next poll. I know it's like poll after poll here, but some good stuff. Which team would perform the best? I'm going to give you 3 potential teams. Now, we're always taught, you need to be a leader, you need to be that A-type, get out there and do that. Do we want a team of all leaders? Do we want a team of all followers? Or do we want one leader and the rest being all followers? And I'm just going to open up that poll here. Oh, look at that. You guys you're just like on the mark here. This is great. Boom, boom, boom. Making my job easy. Either that or you're tired of me and you want to get through this. Not sure which yet. All right. Let's give it a few more moments. Starting to see the activity slow down a little bit here. And just as I expected, yeah, let's take a look at these results. So 89% said one leader, rest followers. A few of us said all leaders. We had 1 vote for all followers. There's a whole body of work around followership, and that book that I mentioned earlier, Leadership is Half the Story, is a fabulous one if you want to investigate this. I'm a huge fan of this concept. From a team perspective, though, we need to have that balance. Now, I actually participated in an exercise where they put us into 3 groups, and they gave us some cards which gave us some indications of how we should behave. And I was in the group of all leaders. It was by happenstance that I landed there. And there was another group of all followers, and then there was a group with 1 leader, 1 follower. And we were given a very simple task to do. We were given a couple minutes to do it, about 5 minutes or so. The team with the 1 leader and the rest followers, boom, done. Right? They finished it in about 30 seconds. And the task was to line up in order of birthday. So who's kind of the oldest, the youngest. The all followers came in second, and they only just finished it around the 5-minute mark. And in the debrief, we discovered that eventually they kind of all sort of appointed a leader, and as soon as they did that, they got the job done. The group of all leaders, on the other hand, yeah, we just kind of fought for 5 minutes and didn't get the job done. It really kind of brought that forward. And the important thing is, well, I do agree we want to have leadership qualities, and I think having a team with lots of leadership qualities is really good. We do also have to recognize that there is a proper time for us to, step back, be a follower. And when I say be a follower, I don't mean be a sheep. I don't mean, the whole blindly follow thing. I mean, take the appropriate role to get the job done that needs to get done. Because at the end of the day, we need to do that. So I'm going to kind of sum this up here and kind of share with you this Vulcan Proverb, which I really, really like. So this is Sarek, who's kind of the founder of the whole Vulcan philosophy of the logic and et cetera. I am pleased to see that we have differences. May we together become greater than the sum of both of us. And to me, it really sums up what we should be doing within our teams. We do tend to hire people who are like us. That is our natural tendency. But when we do, we end up with a whole team of leaders, because if the leader's doing the hiring, we end up with that. Now, if you've got a really good leader who's hired also really good leaders, well, then they also have followership skills, and they know when it is time to take the lead and when it is not. So that can work, but we do have to have some accountability. We do have to have some governance. We do have to have some structure to help us, kind of navigate that. So with all of that in mind, we're now going to take a look at the HR management processes, and I'm just noticing that I didn't update my title slide. Quality management. All right, so I'm going to have to fix that one. There are 4 processes here: plan, human resources, management, acquire the team, develop the team, manage the team. Now, we're going to focus in today around develop the team and manage the team, because I think that's really where the kind of the juicy parts are, the meaty parts. Planning it, that's the mechanics of figuring out how we're going to go about this. The managing the team, I like to look at working with a team and leading a team. And the analogy I like to take here is it's a journey, not a destination. So it is something we need to continue to do and continue to go on. So starting off with the development of the team. The purpose here is to turn a group of people into a team. And the basic principle here is that when you put 10 people in a room, you have 10 people in a room, right? You don't have a team, right? It takes time and effort and energy to take that team or take that group of people and turn them into a functioning team, right? And usually what ends up happening is we need to have someone emerge as the leader. And I say the word emerge because while we're often appointed that task, true leadership doesn't come from a title. It comes from you and what you do, and it's earned, not awarded. So there are people who are leaders who are not titled. We all know this. We all work with those people, and we all know that when you want to get something done in this organization, you need to go to see Jan in whichever department, who's the the assistant to this person or who's frontline staff on that, because that's how you're going to get things done. So we need to turn those 5 people or those 10 people or 20 people or however many it is. We need to turn that group of people into a team. And one of my favorite models for looking at this is the Tuckman Model. And the Tuckman Model has actually 5 stages. Now, there's 4 main stages, which is forming, storming, norming, performing. The 5th one, adjourning, is kind of a little bit separate because that's when the team disbands. But let's take a look at the 4 first, then we'll put the 5th into context. Every time you bring a team together for the first time, you are informing, okay? And the behaviors that we see there are things like polite and guarded and businesslike. And looking at this model and teaching this model over the years, I reflect back and I often use my classes that I teach as an example of our project. If we think about it, it meets the criteria. It has a beginning and an end. There's a deliverable. It's executed by people. It's usually measured in some way. Now, looking at the Tuckman model, it occurred to me one day, okay, let's apply the Tuckman model to a class. Even if it's a one-day class, right? 1 day, 5 day, whatever that looks like. And it always starts out exactly the same. Everyone walks in the morning. They're very polite, they're very guarded, they're very businesslike, right? It's like, oh, good morning, how are you? And, I'm so-and-so and all this kind of stuff. Now, fortunately, in my environment, don't do too much storming. But in the storming phase, that's where we're confronting people, that's where control issues, that's where struggling occurs. Then we move into norming, where we're now confronting issues instead of confronting people. We're now getting procedural. We're now starting to get team-oriented. This is when we're starting to figure out what we're doing and how we're going to function together. And then finally, we move into performing. And notice the behaviors here. It's caring, it's trusting, and it's flexible. So these are the teams when you are challenged or struggling, and you reach out for help. The other person says, "Dude, I got your back. I'm going to help you out here," right? It's also trusting because in that kind of environment, you can stand up and say, "You know what? I'm having trouble here," and you can trust that you're not going to be, ostracized or criticized, etc. But it's also flexible because we all got to be flexible, right? It's things are never going to go really smoothly. Now you notice the arrows keep going round and around and around, right? So yes, we do start here, but we can be thrown back. So let's assume that we've got a good performing team. We're in that caring, trusting, flexible stage, and something happens. Maybe it's a challenge, and we move into storming, or we drop back into forming, or you have a change in staff. You have key people leave, new people come in. We've actually just gone through a fairly extensive transition period within our organization where we've had a couple new staff come in, and it's definitely we kind of went back into forming, right? So you meet the new guy and the new gal on that first day. It's like, hi, I'm Dave, and pleased to meet you. And you tend to be very polite and guarded, and then how quickly you move through storming, norming, and get into performing. There's a lot of factors around that. Not the least of which, especially in the scenario I just described, where you've got an intact team and you've got new members coming in or departing. How much you truly were already in performing, right? So that can help you get back in. Now, for my classes, as you know, anytime you take a class, one of the first things I always do is some sort of icebreaker, some sort of let's get in and get going kind of thing. And the idea of that is to help us through the forming stage, help us through the storming, get into norming, because you think about what a good effective opening on a training class does. There's a lot of stuff like, here's how we're going to function together as a team, here's how we're going to behave, here's what we're going to do, when we're going to start, when we're going to stop, very procedural stuff. So the instructor moves you or helps you get into those various phases and places and get things moving forward. So you look at what a good instructor does at the beginning of a class. First of all, they greet the people as they walk in, so there's the polite stuff. The control for control issues and struggling and confronting people. Well, by establishing kind of here's the norms and here's my role and your role, we can help move through that very, very quickly. We get into the norming stage. How are we going to work procedurally? Things like here's the ground rules for the room and things like that. And then we move into that caring and trusting and flexible stage. What I like to do in my sessions is, first of all, is I use a working agreement. And this is a way for the team to develop how we're going to work together. I also like to do an exercise that adds a personal element so that we get to know the people a little bit. That helps us move into the caring, trusting, and flexible stage, because when you understand the people and know them as people and not just a name and a position, it's much easier and better to be able to do the caring and trusting and flexible piece. Now, I want to just spend a few moments and just address adjourning, and especially relevant for project teams, because project teams are temporary. Right? So how are you going to disband? How are you going to wrap everything up? Now, in our lives, we have many transitions. We graduate school. We find a partner in life that we commit to. We have our first child. We buy a house. Things like that. We have a death in the family. So these are all transitions, and this is a form of adjourning. Now let's think about what we do in those scenarios. We celebrate. We have a party. Right? So there's a new birth, there's a new arrival, you've graduated school, you have a party. You celebrate that. You mark the occasion with basically and effectively a ceremony. We do the same when people leave us. So I was at a client yesterday and stepped out of the training room to go hit the washroom, and there's this huge cake and stuff, and there's obviously a bit of a celebration. I said, hey, what's going on? They said, oh, one of our team members is heading out and they're moving on, and it's like, oh, that's so fantastic. And so they mark the occasion with a celebration. Now what this does is it helps the rest of the team who's staying there deal with the loss, because it is a loss, right? I mean, yes, they are still with us on the planet, but anytime you have someone who leaves your company, I mean, the reality is, unless they're a very close friend, you usually tend to lose touch with them, right? There are some exceptions to that, of course, but I look at a team I was with. There was about 60 people on the team, with the team for a couple of years. Yeah, there's 2 of them that I still stay in pretty close contact with. They've become good friends, which is actually a real sign that we were into a true performing team, because we had caring and trust and flexibility there. But there were a lot of people there that I worked very closely with, that we just didn't stay in touch with anymore. And for all intents and purposes, they are out of my life now. Now I could always reach out to them and reconnect, but the reality is, when you disband a team or when you leave a team, you are adjourning. You are leaving, and there is going to be that sense of loss. Now, if we take that to the extreme, I want you to think about a project that you were on where you were sequestered to that project for a couple of years, right? I mean, 2 years in today's world for some people is an entire career job placement, right? And especially if you were sequestered to the project, you're now coming out of that project going, do I even have a job anymore? Where do I fit in the organization? What's that going to look like? So there can be some really heavy emotions around that. And as project managers, as leaders of these teams, we're behooving to our teams to help them with this transition. And really that's what adjourning is all about. So we're going to start with forming, help the teams move through storming and norming and get to performing, monitor what's going on, see that they're there, and help them stay there. Okay. Now, we talk about managing a team, and I already used the analogy that a team managing it is it's kind of a journey and not a not a destination. So it's not like you set up the team and you do your one team building exercise and everyone gels and we're in forming or we're in storming and we're good to go. So my fundamental tenet here is teams are like gardens. They need constant tending. My neighbor 2 doors down, Kathy, she's an amazing gardener. She's semi-retired, and basically what she does for a living in the summer is she tends to her garden and 3 other gardens in the village, and they are gorgeous. They're amazing, just phenomenal. And she does such a fabulous job, but you see how much work it is, and you see her there every day, weeding and watering and tinkering and tending to those gardens and just, tweaking them and making them look good. Teams are a lot like that. Yes, you want to set them up. Yes, you want to do good foundation. Yes, you want to give the environment, the proper soil type, the proper amount of moisture and shade and light and, all those things that are going to be important to those team members. And it's going to be different for different team members. So we have, one team member who prefers full sun, another team member who prefers partial shade, one who likes, more damp environment, one who likes, more drier soil and drainage, and, whatever that looks like. And then, of course, some of those team members want to crowd out the others, yeah? So, we want to find that nice balance. And, of course, any good garden has a lot of diversity. It has different things. It has some flowering plants and some herbal plants. And different plants play different roles, because you can plant, certain species to invite bees that'll pollinate. You can plant other species that are going to ward away the aphids and the ones that, destroy and eat your garden and things like that. So we want to put together a nice, good, balanced garden, something that's going to do the job, in this case being aesthetically pleasing, but also it's going to function and function well. And how well we do that from a foundational perspective is really going to drive how much tending we need to do to the garden once it's been established. But the reality is, no matter how good a job we do, they have to be tended. So one of the concepts that I'm really a huge fan of around that, and this is going to kind of shift back towards the individual relationship a little bit, is the Situational Leadership model by Hershey and Blanchard. This model's been around for a lot of years, and it's standing the test of time, in my humble opinion. And a couple reasons why I like this one. First of all, it is situational, and the situation is a combination of the individual or group that you're dealing with and the actual task that you're approaching. Which means when I'm working with a particular individual, I'm going to approach that individual using different methods based on the situation. Right? Now, I may be in the same situation with a different individual, and again, it's going to drive, which one we choose. So we start out in the bottom left corner, delegating. Key to delegating is you need to give that person authority. Right? Delegating is not dumping. You got to pick the right person. You got to pick the right job. And the other key to delegating is don't tell them how to do it. It's like, here's what I want done, go get it done. Here's the objective, and leave them to it. The second you start telling them how to do it, you've moved into telling. Participating is when you sit down with the person and you spend time. Now, the two spectrums here are relationship versus task. Think about how you build relationships. You build relationships by spending time. Right? So you've got a new person potentially at work and in a social environment, and you want to get to know them. You want to build the relationship. You spend some time with them. That can be in the form of going out to lunch, going out to dinner, or participating with them in tasks at work. Let's sit down and do this job together. So when we have a high focus on the task, the main thing is about getting the job done. Telling will get the job done, but often at the sacrifice for the relationship. Now, participating, you're going to walk out of that experience with a higher relationship, but there's actually a slightly reduced focus on the task. And the reason we say that is because you're now spending more time and money getting the task done when you could have done it more quickly and efficiently. So think of those scenarios, and guilty as charged, folks. It's like, I want to get this done quick, so I'm just going to do it myself, right? Versus, okay, we've got the new guy. Let me walk you through this. It's going to take longer, but you're going to kind of help get that done. And then finally, selling, and this is kind of the sweet spot. That's where we walk out of the scenario with the relationship intact, or better yet, improved upon, as well as the task is getting done. Now, the simple way I look at this is I equate it to a bank account. And when you focus on a relationship, you're making deposits in the account. And when you focus on the task, you're making withdrawals. And if you think of people in your lives where they only ever make withdrawals, you shut down their bank account. Similarly, if you're only making deposits, it's not a healthy bank account. Good, healthy bank accounts have both deposits and withdrawals. And it takes time, right? So let's think about that as we're working with our teams and trying to help develop a better team and better relationships with our individuals. So just want to kind of wrap up. We've been on our series of 10. We've often been finishing with this sentiment of what is project success. And in this picture here, I've got a team of horses, or 6 horses. It's the stagecoach. And there's an old expression that is, driver, to the station, don't spare the horses. And basically what you're doing is you're telling the driver of this team, the leader of this team, to go really fast, right? Because maybe you're trying to catch the train or whatever. And in fact, you're going so fast that when you arrive at your destination, when you have completed the project, the team is spent. They're done. They can't be used anymore. Now, back in the day when we used to have horses as our transportation, there was the Pony Express, which is famous for delivering mail and messages across the country. But what they did is they had a series of them, and one would go for a short distance, and then the next would pick up and go, and the next would pick up and go, and so on. And the reason they did this is because you couldn't run the horse that far or that fast. And it's the same thing with your projects. When you look at your team, you can't run them so fast that when you're done, when you finish the project, they're done. Now, one of the key things for success in my book is that you've got a team that's useful. You've got a team that not only is able to do another project, but wants to work together again. So if you're one of those horses and you're working hard on that team, you know, is your driver being fair? Are they treating you with respect and working you hard, which is good, enjoyable work, but not so hard that you're completely spent? There are times when we're going to sprint, but we also need to realize that, especially in longer projects, we need to run at a marathon pace because we can't maintain that pace for too long. Okay. Oh my goodness, look at the time. It's 1 o'clock. I'm going to leave this with you as a takeaway to think about how do we apply this in the virtual world. Think about all of those things that we've talked about in doing, you know, the kickoff meeting, the opening exercise, the how do we get together. When we apply this in the virtual world, doing that over long distance connections, you know, how can we do that? I'll give you that as some kind of food for thought to take away. And if you're interested in continuing the discussion, please feel free to drop me an email. Richard, slow and steady wins the race. Totally agree, dude. Love it. All right, so some key points to leave you with. Get the right people on the bus. Now, I've been alluding to some changes in our environment. We've fairly recently had a new president come on. Al, great guy. I was out for lunch with him the other day, and I was telling him about my webinar and what I was putting together, and we were chatting about this whole get the right people on the bus. He said, yeah, and get them in the right seats. So he shared an experience where he had a really good team that wasn't working. He shuffled the seats around because they were in the wrong seats, and things really started to gel. You got to support them, right? And that may be in the form of driving them a little harder so that we've got some you know, difficult things are you know, it improves your performance. But we also want to do it in balance so we're not burning them out. And then finally, put time and resources into developing your team, and dare I say, time and resources into developing and managing, because it is a journey, not a destination. So from our opening thought, get the right people on the bus. Make sure you've got the right folks there. Right is different for different people. It's different for different situations. And get them in the right seats. Thank you guys so much. I will happily hang on and see if there is see if there's any questions that we want to address. But otherwise, we'll see you guys next time in about 2 weeks, December 2nd. And that one's going to be around communication. Really looking forward to that one. So thank you guys so much. So it looks like we have a question from Sean. It says, why is a good attitude so desirable to get quickly through forming and storming? I think the good attitude will help, because when we have that bad attitude, we're going to throw roadblocks up. And if my attitude isn't willing and open, then I'm going to put those roadblocks up, and I'm not going to allow us to move, and it's going to basically stall me in storming. Now, if you want to explore this concept a little bit further, and I forget the lady's name right now off the top of my head, but there's a concept that's relatively new, which is called a fixed mindset or an open mindset. And if you can't, Google it and just Google fixed mindset, you'll find it. If you have any trouble finding that, let me know. But if we have a team with a really good attitude, they tend to be more receptive. They'll at least give it a try. And that's really the first step. We've got to give that a try. So great question. Thank you. I think that's it. So again, you have any questions or comments, my email's down the bottom, david.donaldson@TidalShift.ca. The recording will be available, and we'll be sending an invite out for the next one. So thank you.